My job on MK1 was basically to do backgrounds. Like John would do characters and I would do the backgrounds. Things were very simple back then, you know, like.
One more time.
He would choose which frames he wanted to use and then cut the background away from the characters, and that was his job, you know.
Literally after we shot the footage, I think maybe that night or the next day, I started stripping frames. Yeah. Right away. We did a lot of playing around with lighting. We were just sort of discovering. I think we probably taped more than we needed just to make sure that we got enough coverage.
I remember after the Sonya's leg grab, having to say something along the lines of, you know, trust us, it's going to be really cool. The image was clear in my head. Sometimes we forget that it's not inside everybody's head.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, now once from the very middle, all you have to do is just land right there.
Can you do that, or is that
The beginning part.
She should do it from the stance.
Right.
We were trying to get a film-like quality, but we wanted to just amp it up a little bit. And once we realized that pumping up colors really attracted people to our games, that was, you know, also our trademark.
A lot of the character design that I did for Mortal Kombat was based on the limitations of the hardware. So I knew that we had a limited color palette that we could work with. I knew that you know, the pixel resolution kind of restricted what we were capable of doing. So bold colors, simple shapes would distinguish one character from another would be important. And I knew that a color palette that would distinguish one character from another was also important. I was careful not to repeat those things.
You know, the thing about the ninjas was, you know, the nature of them. As you know, there were palette swaps of each other. It was all to save memory. You know, it was a very precious thing in our arcade games. And so, Scorpion and Sub-Zero, they were the same character with different colors. You know, John wrote this amazing backstory behind them, making them enemies, and that added to the mystique of the characters.
In one of the pages of my notebook, I had scribbled, okay, here are the characters and here are their archetypes. I knew that, well, we need a hero, we need a villain, we need a sidekick, we need all these things. I was a big Joseph Campbell fan. I had read his books and I was aware of the hero's journey and the character archetypes that he had sort of outlined. I thought, okay, well, if we could tell implicit story through character archetypes, the players might sort of almost subconsciously relate to the characters in a particular way. So that played a part in sort of the character choices we made. I don't recall exactly why we did some characters and not others. I know that we were limited with the number of characters we could do. A few of them I remember not using. One of them was a character called Minamoto Yoshitsune. It was based on a Japanese mythological character. And another one was called Rakuro, who was based on, I think, a Japanese mythological beasts. Those two characters didn't make it in. I think part of it was because the names became a big deal for us. It's like, you know, how does this name roll off the tongue? You know, if a name was too long, we knew it was going to be difficult to display on the health meters. It was usually silly things like that would play a part in some of the choices we made.
Most of the characters' names came from John Tobias. A couple of the characters, he didn't have a name written down for them. He had Ninja 1 and Ninja 2. I was a little bit more of like a simple superhero mindset, so I started calling them Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Those simple names were kind of like my influence, but the authentic, cool names, Goro, Shang Tsung, Kano, Raiden, you know, that was John's deal.
For Mortal Kombat 1, there wasn't a lot in the way of concept art that we did. Conceptualization was just limited to just scribblings in a notepad.
I don't remember many, if any, drawings of backgrounds, but there may have been some. I just remember kind of like I said, just winging it and doing whatever. Like John would say, I'd like a dungeon or something, and that became Goro's lair, you know. I had already learned how to do the parallax scrolling stuff from Terminator 2, so that worked out well with doing parallax stuff for Mortal Kombat as well. I know there was one specific background that he wanted, and that was with statues, the statue background. Just make something look cool. That was basically the rule. I went to Chinatown, and just to get references and stuff, there would be, you know, an interesting vase, and I would video that vase, and then I use that, and that's Shang Tsung's one of Shang Tsung's thrones is like the vase, you know. There's the dragon that was sitting on Ken Fedesna's desk. I just said, hey, can I video that? And he's like, cool. So I grabbed it off his desk, took it to my office, and grabbed it. That's like in one of the backgrounds, and there's two of them, you know. And then there's the pagoda in Chinatown that I videoed that and used that as, you know, the courtyard, I guess we call it. I think, you know, Shang Tsung is also in another chair, and it's that big roof thing. That's from Chicago. That's from Chinatown. So sometimes it meant opening a book and going, oh, that's a cool Chinese thing. You know, get the camera, take video of it, and use that. There are things from books in Mortal Kombat 1. You know, I just went out and grabbed stuff. What looks cool? Kind of a guerrilla artsy sort of way. It wasn't really planned all that much back then.
One of the really cool things about Mortal Kombat and about some of the really great games, if you have a really great winning concept, often, you know, they got that game running in like a month. A lot of modern games, it seems like they spend all their time in this graphical wilderness trying to get everything looking so cool, and then they've got like 3 weeks left to figure out what the game is.
We had a very fast iteration. I would get art from John. You know, we put it in, and an hour later, we were playing it. We just go. And actually hit the
Raiden wins.
The first time you play it, you just go, this is incredible. You knew you were on the right course.
Ed was like just eager to have people in and give him feedback on stuff.
A lot of times it was just, you know, someone you'd have someone in your office to look at something, and they go, hey, what about this? And then, you know, maybe that's a good idea.
Ideas could come and be turned into reality in the same day.
Yeah,
basically.
in fact, I remember we would record a little bit of footage.
Okay, one more time. All right, that's good.
And it wasn't until Ed actually got the frames and could get them in the game, not until that point would we know that we were making the right choices.
Yeah. When we were making this game, Street Fighter II was the big rage, and I was a huge admirer of that game. At the same time, I felt like there was a little bit more ceiling room in terms of how outrageous you can get with the moves. We wanted characters using magic, disappearing, teleporting, doing all these kind of unpredictable things. And a lot of the moves
were constructed from kind of almost like scraps. Kano's ball was from his flipping animation. Scorpion's teleport was from his jump punch animation.
You know, Scorpion throwing a spear and pulling somebody in, that, you know.
It was something that I remember I thought of that was just an outrageous move that wasn't seen in any other fighting game.
Right, although we used to try to do the wind up and throw is usually like 5 frames maybe. Like if you went like
Yeah, something like that.
It was one of those spur of the moment, inspirational ideas that ended up becoming like very signature, very iconic to Mortal Kombat.
The way he was implementing them was so interesting because he uses the frames of animation, and he was, as a programmer, would move them around to do things. Like he would define like how things animated across the screen.
When we did the Liu Kang flying kick, you got to stop him once he makes contact, and it'll make the impact feel like it's a lot more intense and more forceful. Iterating again and again how important it is that we get the timing of all these things correct.
Other than, you know, how John would define what the actual frames of animation were, Ed defined how things moved around.
There's little nuances that are put into the game that a lot of players don't identify, but they just know that it feels good, and they're not sure why.
I think that was a hard lesson to learn back in the day of, hey, I want this animation to be really smooth and I want it to be like 100 frames. And it's like, no, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And it has to feel good.
Like, it's got to have impact. Impact and drama, you know, that's what people are going to respond to.
Get over here, you know, the uppercut was such a big, ridiculous reaction.
Getting the animation of the character launching him into the air, putting the blood on it, being knocked down, and
They shake the screen.
and the sound call that Dan Forden did.
It's like, no, we need like a really big sound for a hit. It's like, okay, so I made like a really big sound for a hit. The scream of the attacker. The victim, you know, yelling as he flies away. Put all that stuff together, it's like, boom. It's like, oh my God.
I remember we were just walking around just doing uppercuts again and again and going, you know, God, that feels so good, that feels so good.
That's how people knew when something was cool in any game. People were gonna be like, holy smokes. And now you know you have something. And then, so that, and then the fatality.
Like, fatalities were the big thing that made us a hit.
this move.
One more time. All right, that's cool.
Do ninjas ever have this sort of?
That was cool, dude. What was that?
You pull something like an arrow or whatever, it's stuck into the other guy, and it dragged him across the
Didn't you say?
Right, although we used to try to do the wind up and throw is usually like 5 frames maybe. Like if you went like that.
Yeah, something like that. You can do the wind up. Maybe something more like you do like this, because you know what I'll do? I'll like trail the rope.
Right. Can you make where you throw the plane like I want the hit the guy in the chest, you know? Because we have a bunch of frames and we can use that as a drag. So when you stop, your arm is parallel with your chest as opposed to way down here.
Okay, so try to do it chest level. Okay. A little bit more of a wind up. And that would be alright, because I could do like a little thing in the rope, more like this, like a little snake thing. Oh, you know what? Wait, you know what we should do? After he does that, we should have him do.
Well, I think he ought to do like a.
Yeah, okay. So, do the throw, and then we need some kind of throw back.
Put your hands together and do that.
Okay. Yeah.
When try to wind up with a little more like right now you're kind of just going.
Yeah. Okay, one more time.
Street Fighter had this feature which I loved and hated at the same time. You can get your opponent dizzy. I loved the fact when I was the aggressor and saw my opponent dizzy, you're almost like salivating at this free hit that you get. And then I hated the idea of being the victim. I put the dizzy feature at the end of the fight. You just get like one last hit. And everybody would do an uppercut as your kind of like payoff. We had a feature that we had dropped in the game where Shang Tsung, when he would defeat you, he would take a sword out and he would like cut your head off. And we weren't going to use it because we were out of space, but we still had the animations of all the characters falling to their knees without a head. One day I just kind of piecemealed the idea of Johnny Cage uppercutting the opponent with this uppercut animation and then using the animations of the character with his head, you know, cut off.
Johnny Cage wins. Flawless victory fatality.
I showed it to John, I showed it to the rest of the team, and everybody lost their mind, and we have to do this. The fact that we gave the players the ability to actually perform this kind of death blow, this kind of killing move, was really the birth of that idea. Some people were kind of like saying, I don't think we can get away with, you know, letting the player kill the other player. So we showed it to management, and they loved it.
I was surprised that we could include the level of blood spattering around that we did. But of course, you know, when I was working on Mortal Kombat, I had just come from Smash TV and Total Carnage. And so, you know, the levels of blood spattering around the screen wasn't new to me.
From that point on, it was, okay, now we got to think of fatalities for all the characters. Some of the later characters, we actually grabbed animations of them, you know, Kano ripping the heart out, Sonya doing the kiss of death and all that. The spine rip was a suggestion from John Tobias referencing the movie Predator, and he said, why don't we do what they did in Predator where you pull the head out?
It's just like, oh, it was just like, oh my God.
And I remember saying, I think that's probably crossing the line. We can't do it. Again, once we mocked it up, put it into the game, there was no turning back. Everybody was just losing their mind.
And if anything, I felt like there was a bit of encouragement coming from other folks, around the office, just because of the excitement that it drew from the players.
Everybody had to see this. No one had ever seen somebody removing someone's spinal cord. It's interesting. It made it so much more emotional. It's just like, you're just like, yeah! It's almost like that barbaric, primal emotion, like, yeah!
We never performance captured a fatality for Liu Kang. But there were some animations that we had not used. One of them was this really cool cartwheel kick.
Whoa. Yeah, let's grab that again, even if we don't use it. Right. We'll use it someplace.
We were both like, wow, we'll find a place for that. When it came time to do Liu Kang's fatality, we just spliced on the uppercut animation at the end of it, and it wasn't disgusting, it wasn't gross, it wasn't shocking.
Liu Kang wins.
And we just kind of reasoned with ourselves to say, well, Liu Kang's the hero, he's a Shaolin monk, he's peaceful, heroes don't kill people, so he just gave him a big uppercut. The process of adding fatalities into the game created so much energy in the whole studio in terms of their excitement for the game that we knew there was no backing out of it at that point.
Again, you're in a very small screen environment. You really have to exaggerate things. You have to make it just outrageous.
Scorpion wins.
We found the Holy Grail. It's like hitting the lottery. It was something that we knew was going to be a signature part of Mortal Kombat.
I always judge a great game by how loud players get when they play. You yell at your friends and laugh, and the volume level is a measure of a good game for me.
And like I said, it was just fun and it was happy, and that may be the secret sauce.
Again, when you see people playing the game and they're losing their minds and they're reacting to it, there's your fuel. Yeah. There's your fuel for the next, for the next year to do it. So.
Who put the K in combat?
I did. I put the K in combat. I didn't come up with a name, but the K. This is my story. This is my memory, anyway.
I came up with Mortal and the K instead of a C.
Yeah, we know what's going to happen. We're going to come up with all the names. We're all going to like them, and Ed's going to hate every one of them. Why? DEFCON is overused. Where? Everywhere. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah, every time you watch War Game.
Ed's probably right behind me, isn't he? Like, oh, no, you didn't.
I think there's different stories going on. This is my recollection. It's been 30 years. We had a bunch of words written on a grease board.
We didn't have a name, so there was a bunch of possibilities, and one of them was Mortal Kombat.
Combat was written, I don't know if it had a K at the time, but Steve Ritchie, he said the words, what about Mortal Kombat?
They had combat on their whiteboard, but they were all a lot younger than me, and I'm not sure they ever heard of the phrase, they fought in Mortal Kombat, meaning somebody's going to die. It is what this game is about. It's Mortal Kombat.
And when he said that, from my perspective, it was like, whoa, there's the name right there. But I don't remember. Do you remember where the K came from?
Yeah, so, what I remember was that. And then I think we went to legal with that name, Mortal Kombat, with a C. And they came back and said no, because they couldn't trademark it. Because it was, I guess, a common term. I remember it was John Vogel,
right,
who wrote the K.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, he might have done that before that conversation with the legal department.
As a joke, I was in the room with Ed, and as a joke, I changed the C to a K, and we were like laughing about it. Ha ha ha, that'd be funny, oh, it's so stupid. And then, so I said, all right. And I was putting it back to a C, and he goes, no, leave it. Just leave the K. And so that's my memory as how it happened.
No, it was me, because the C was like, I don't know, just look cooler with the K. That's my thoughts.
And then I think we went back to legal and said, what about if it has a K? And then they went away, and then they came back and said, yes, you can. If you put a K on it, we can trademark it.
Actually, John Vogel's involvement does ring a bell for me.
I don't think I was enamored with the K. I think I thought it was goofy. And then when the realization hit that, well, if we change it with a K, we can use Mortal Kombat, it's like, oh, damn it. We're going to give it, like Vogel was right.
Yeah.
So whether you hate me or love me for it, now C's are now K's.
This is the sound area. This is where they make all the sounds for the games.
I am an audio director here at NetherRealm. The sound guy, like, gotta get the voices in.
Dan shows you cool stuff every couple of days. He just comes in and you go, great, this is awesome.
And he's a lot like Ed, where I just have this confidence that, he's going to go away and come back with something spectacular.
That's the Johnny Cage Nut Crunch, I believe. Didn't someone make a candy bar, Johnny Cage Nut Crunch bar?
Again, we didn't know what we were doing, so it's just, okay, it's a fighting game, a lot of yelling, a lot of pain. I don't think we had enough memory to record, okay, this is Scorpion's voice, this is Sub-Zero, so we just, like the men, we just mixed and matched. And I think Sonya was the only female in the first one, so we had obviously a female voice for that, and that was hers. But the rest of them, I think, would just be shared. We just get the talent, which was just people around the studio. It's not like we were hiring people to come in and do this.
We recorded me as the announcer, as Shang Tsung. Liu Kang wins. Finish him.
Liu Kang wins. Fatality.
Fatality. All of those kind of classic sound calls was me, because we didn't have somebody with a better voice. Later on, we found Steve Ritchie, who had a much better voice in terms of like an announcer.
Baraka wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
I did a terrible Bruce Lee impersonation for Liu Kang. I think I did a yell for Kano.
Kano wins.
But I was also the voice of Scorpion, yelling, get over here.
Get over here. Excellent. Come here.
I had worked with Dan Forden for many years at the time. I remember there was another sound guy who thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. And it kind of was, why would a ninja, yell, get over here? That's such like an American kind of thing.
Come here. Scorpion wins.
The idea was, again, the outrageous presentation. We really wanted to have, just yelling and loudness in general into the game. From something that became with such silly roots and beginnings, you can't imagine Scorpion not having the get over here.
Ed would get me, this is back in the days of VHS, right? He would get me a playthrough of the background that I'd be working on. These are the instruments that I have, and look at the background, trying to think of like, well, what makes sense musically for this.
You try to imagine the action of playing the game and what the music's gonna do to like get you revved up.
Ever since I don't know, the 70s, early 70s even, but always liked progressive rock a lot. So a friend of mine turned me on to King Crimson in high school, and that's been like a love of mine ever since. And so there's no doubt that there's a lot of King Crimson influence in the Mortal Kombat music that I wrote over the years. You know, like the very first tune, it's a melody in a diminished scale, harmonized at the fifth, so that sounds like a lot of King Crimson stuff. I think they pretty much liked everything I did. I don't remember doing over too many things. Now and then there would be like, you know, maybe you should try this instead of that, and some sort of corrective feedback, but for the most part, it's just we were just kind of making it up as we went along.
Testing a game was always one of the most fun parts of the job.
In the earliest days of Mortal Kombat development, the only place you could play the game was in Ed's office. I would play the game every day. Ed would call me in to try something out, but other people, you know, would walk by Ed's office and see what he was working on and come in and play the game. And it was very valuable feedback, because that feedback was coming from guys like Eugene and Mark Trammell and George Petro and, you know, a lot of the other developers in the office at the time. Eventually, we would put a game out in the hallway for anybody to play. And so we'd get pinball designers would come down and play the game. There were folks who worked in the factory would come back and they would play the game. And so we'd watch folks kind of play the game, and we'd take notes on sort of, you know, what the reactions were. And then eventually that would lead to our first weekend test.
Testing the game in the arcade was such a critical part of determining what's working and what doesn't work.
Being on test is like one of the best parts, one of the most exciting parts of doing an arcade game.
Our first location test was a weekend test that we did, and that was done at an arcade called Times Square. It was a Friday night, so it was packed. The arcade was packed. And there was a crowd around the Street Fighter game. Street Fighter 2 was out at the time. And I just thought, there's no way these guys are coming over to play our game.
It was like this big event. The whole video game department would go, no matter whose game it was.
You'd roll a blank black cabinet into an arcade and just turn it on.
When we brought the first Mortal Kombat game out on test, there were 6 characters. We didn't have Sonya yet. A whole bunch of things just weren't working. And it was all about just kind of the fundamentals, the feel of it, the reaction to the visual, the reaction to blood.
That rush, that reverie, or that destruction and devastation if something doesn't work out, you know, like, it's like, oh, we got to fix that, you know, and it hurts, you know, it feels bad.
I remember watching the first player, he was one of the guys from the crowd, walking over and looking at the attract mode and then dropping a token in and playing the game. And then I remember he walked over, tapped, fell on the shoulder, you know, called him over, and then the other guy came over, and then they played the game. And then slowly people migrated over.
Whenever you would see a secret move come out, I remember the first time they saw Raiden do the dive move, you know, you'd hear an audible, you know, cheering or gasp, or, you know, how did you do that? Easily the most enjoyable part for me was seeing and hearing reactions from players.
And at some point, Ed, I think, went in and he did a fatality. Kind of a thing, and then he walked away, you know. Like, now it's a big frenzy to figure out, like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And that's how people found out about the fatalities. Assuming my memory is correct, but I believe that's how it happened.
We would never perform fatalities in front of people because then someone's going to see you do it, right? Like we wanted to launch the game and have people discover it naturally and organically.
Testing the first Mortal Kombat, there was a certain amount of anonymity, I guess you can say. Like we could be in an arcade watching with a crowd of other people and be close enough in age to them that we just kind of blend in. You know, what is this new game? And then you would get a candid response. Once you tell them that you worked on the game, then you know, they're not going to say anything negative about it.
Across the street from Times Square was a pizza place. And so we would go across the street, get some pizza, and we would discuss, you know, everything that we saw, what was cool, what was not cool, or, you know, what should we change? You know, hey, that was cool. And it was so much fun.
Seeing that first game on test was so reaffirming that we had something big. I saw players get so excited they just had to run. They just had to run around like in circles.
By the end of that night, we had a pack of players around our game, hooting and hollering and just having a great time.
Players that we saw first see the game on a Friday, we saw them the entire weekend.
And I think at that point I thought, okay, we're gonna be okay.
This was our first game that we were doing kind of as the leaders of the games. You know, Mark Trammell was the kind of leader of the Smash TV team, and Eugene was kind of the leader of the High Impact team, along with John Newcomer. And so this was kind of like our first solo project.
I think they have complementary skill sets.
We're symbiotic in a way. Certainly in the first few games, it was just like we just knew what the other person was looking for. And I don't know that we ever... I mean, if we had an argument, it certainly wasn't about the work that we were doing. We just seemed to know what the other person was looking for.
They worked well because they trusted each other's talents enough to say, okay, yeah, you know what you're talking about. Ed took care of all the programming. John took care of all the art.
They just had this unsaid, hey, you know, it'd be fun. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's do it.
Working with Ed, one of his great strengths were just his focus, I think, and his ability to just grind and get things done. Ed, who was the sole programmer to create that game, in hindsight was incredible.
For one programmer to do all those games is pretty amazing. And
his door is always open. He wants to hear new ideas. He's dangerously funny, where it just busts me up at least once a day.
He would just crack us up all the time, just his jokes, and he made it easy to work the long hours.
John is a really good storyteller. John has a history in as a comic book artist. So I think that probably contributed to his ability to tell a compact story. The only story we had was a little paragraph that would play underneath the character doing a kata, but that was enough to really intrigue players.
You really gave a shit about it because of the backstory, because about the whole mythology that John Tobias had created. You know, maybe not unlike WWF or something, almost like Star Wars in martial arts.
The first game truly was like an expression of just who we were at the time. We were in our early 20s, the stuff that we consumed growing up as kids, and we just threw it all into the game. There was nobody telling us what to do, how to do it.
I think it was a great partnership, and I think, you know, what can you say? Success beyond belief.
Fighting games have proven themselves to be strong collectors suitable for a wide range of locations. They embody the most attractive elements of the arcade experience: characters endowed with mythic powers, full player control, secret moves, and the kind of unbridled, head-to-head competition that compels repeat buying. Now from Midway comes Mortal Kombat. It captures the most popular elements of the fighting game and adds more. More control, more powerful characters, more depth, more secret moves, and advanced digitized graphics, delivering the most realistic fighting action available. Begin Mortal Kombat by choosing one of 7 characters, each boasting an arsenal of unique talents. There's Johnny Cage, the brash Hollywood movie star; Kano, thief and mercenary; Raiden, the mythical thunder god; Liu Kang, the fighting Shaolin monk; Scorpion, a ninja warrior bent on revenge; Sub-Zero, the ultimate assassin; and Sonya, U.S. Special Forces soldier. Each player has 5 basic moves corresponding to the 5 action buttons. High punch, high kick, low punch, low kick, and a block. In addition to these moves, players will continue to discover new joystick button combinations. Each new technique provides another competitive edge. For example, moving the joystick away from your opponent while pressing the low kick button will result in this sweep kick. Moving the joystick straight down will put the player in a crouch. By then releasing the joystick and pressing low punch, you'll administer a devastating uppercut.
Johnny Cage wins. Excellent.
Secret moves play a big part in the success of any fighting game. Collections soar as players strive to develop a character's full fighting potential. Mortal Kombat has several times more secret moves than the nearest competitor. The button joystick combinations required to execute these moves are different for each character, as are the moves themselves. And each character's arsenal of secret moves offers unique tactical advantages. If you learn one of Sonya's secret moves, you'll be able to perform this devastating scissor throw. Learning to activate Raiden's secret weapon lets you fire lightning bolts at your opponents.
Raiden wins.
Victory is achieved by winning 2 out of 3 rounds. Players losing a match will have to buy in to continue.
Liu Kang wins.
Finally, winning 3 matches against paired adversaries will put you in the ring opposite Goro, a 4-armed, unstoppable titan, half human, half dragon. Should Goro be subdued, you'll engage the most deceptive and powerful opponent of all, Shang Tsung, the bloodthirsty emperor capable of instantly becoming any fighter he chooses. Conquer Shang Tsung, and you will have joined unfrequented ranks, those who have battled all adversaries, yet survived.
Test your might.
Every 5 matches during both 1- and 2-player games, you'll have a chance to test your strength and win bonus points by smashing progressively harder objects. Two-player mode allows true head-to-head combat. Players must rely on their fighting abilities, as well as a knowledge of their character's strengths, as they are matched against an opponent with different but equally lethal abilities. Each player selects a character and the match begins. The player losing the best-of-3 match will have the option of buying in to continue. The winning player will continue to play as long as he maintains a string of victories. Loser pays, winner stays. From a technical standpoint, operators will find even more to like. Mortal Kombat employs Midway's exclusive diagnostic package and a sensitive yet durable 8-way microswitch joystick. In addition, operators will want to be aware of a dip switch setting we've included, allowing them to temper the game to fit the requirements of a location. By simply flipping a switch on the CPU board, you're able to remove any depictions of blood that would otherwise appear in the game. Another dip switch will disable the most graphic secret moves. In this way, operators can be sure they're matching the game to the disposition of their clientele. Mortal Kombat is quite simply the most complete video fighting game available. It boasts the industry's most realistic graphics, digitized images of real martial arts experts, heroic characters more powerful than those found on any other fighting game, secret moves to learn and master, and fierce battles against titanic adversaries. All of these elements combine to make this game powerfully unique, the world's most advanced interactive fighting experience.